Morning all. All right, it's a two-game night in the National Hockey League meeting news combined with the preview video, and I'm considering doing a video on Chuck Fletcher because of the news and all that. But let's start off talking about the two games that are on tonight. Starting with the Chicago Blackhawks and the Florida Panthers. 4 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific start there. The Chicago Blackhawks 22-37-5 overall. Florida 32-27-6. These teams met in Chicago on October 25th. Chicago won that one 4-2. So for Florida, they need this, right? Chicago doesn't really matter. They're 5-5 over their last 10 though, so they do enjoy playing spoiler, but it does feel different without Max Domi, not gonna lie. Away from home, they're 9-19-2. They're 26 points behind the Winnipeg Jets currently for that final playoff spot in the West. On the Florida side, they're 32-27-6. Their last 10 games, they're 6-4. At home, they're 18-10-3. They're 4 points behind Pittsburgh for that final playoff spot. So Pittsburgh got a single point last night. This could pull them that much closer. They're tied with Ottawa. They've played one more game than Ottawa, so they're beneath them in the standings, and they're 1 point ahead of the Washington Capitals. So we're starting to see some separation in those teams below the playoff line in the East, and it does favor both Ottawa and Florida. But again, Pittsburgh and the Islanders need to stop getting points as well. And then at 9 Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific, we've got the Anaheim Ducks and the Calgary Flames. So Anaheim's 21-35-9 overall. The Calgary Flames 29-23-13 overall. These teams met December 23rd. Calgary wins that one 3-2. They have two more meetings coming on March the 21st and April the 2nd. So for the Flames, it's really important they win tonight against Anaheim and put that much more pressure on the Jets. Anaheim's 4-3-3 in their last 10. Away from home, they're 10-19-7. They're 24 points behind Winnipeg. On the Calgary side, they're 4-4-2 in their last 10 games. At home, they're 15-13-3. And again, 4 points behind Winnipeg. If they can pull within two, the Jets playing tomorrow, and it's going to be a tough road trip for the Jets. It's possible Calgary makes some more hay in between now and this time next week, and we might be talking about, hey, so Calgary looks like they could be the final team in the playoffs in the West. And if Calgary gets in, it'll be interesting because I don't know what I would expect from Calgary in a first round matchup as an underdog, because I think they're one of those teams that play better as an underdog than as a favorite. So the news this morning, of course, Chuck Fletcher being fired. I was well aware of this well over an hour ago, but when I first wake up, if I do a video when I first wake up, there's a lot of comments about, I don't think he's well. What's wrong with him? What's the problem? Why does he seem so? So yeah, I don't do videos when I've first woken up. So yeah, Chuck Fletcher's out. Daniel Briere's named as the replacement on an interim basis. So they're going to look for a replacement. Briere was named special assistant to the general manager, a very Dwight Schrute sounding name for his job last year, and training him up for this. I don't understand now, like Chuck saying that, he spent the weekend and they were talking it over and everything. Well, I just, the timing's kind of odd because we've seen the trade deadline come and go. I think if you're going to have a new GM in place, if you don't trust your current GM, I think the move should be made before the trade deadline. So at any rate, Philadelphia, we'll see what they do going through from here. I really am curious to make a video on Chuck Fletcher, just look over what he's done in Philadelphia. And I know Philadelphia fans will be really excited to see that. So I'm really seriously considering doing that today. Because again, Fletcher's been kind of universally seen as a guy that should be on the way out. I know that the other Pennsylvania team, their fans were shouting for Hextall to get fired, but it feels like with Philly, it's just kind of a thing where all Philadelphia fans seem to agree on one thing, that there needed to be a replacement for the general manager and president of hockey operations. So they're going to do a search, see who they can come up with for a replacement for Fletcher. But Briere's in place, and we'll see if he's still in place come the draft, right? You would think that if they're going to get a brand new general manager, it would have to be before the draft. So yeah, we'll see what happens. The Washington Capitals announcing they're going to have a bobblehead giveaway on March the 21st to honor Ovechkin passing Gordie Howe. Having seen said bobblehead, it doesn't really look like Ovechkin to me. My favorite was a comment underneath that said, it's weird that it looks like John Scott, something to that effect. And it does. Once I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's a John Scott bobblehead right there. So it's an odd thing, but passing Gordie Howe, apparently there's an augmented reality thing attached to it. There's a lot of, the only thing missing is you don't get an NFT with it. That's the only thing missing. which I thought NFTs were done, but apparently not. At any rate, it's going to be given away March the 21st. And so if you're excited about that idea, you go to that game, you might get yourself a bobblehead. Kaprizov is out 3 to 4 weeks, lower body injury. I've got that written in blue because that came out yesterday after the other news video, but it didn't warrant just having a video strictly on that. Also, it was a really kind of busy day for me yesterday, so at any rate, Kaprizov being out 3 to 4 weeks. Normally, I would say this is really alarming for Minnesota. They're going to have a hard time winning. But with the way that they're playing right now, which is defense, 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 this just means that Dean Evison can double down on it. It's a chance for somebody else to jump up in the lineup and show what they can do. And as I said in the video yesterday, where before we knew how long he was going to be out, maybe Matt Boldy can start getting those points and goals. We'll see which player ends up being the guy. But again, when you're winning your games by 1-0, 2-1 scores, Kaprizov being out, it doesn't feel like it's as impactful as if it was a team that relies on their offense to win games. So the Steve Montador wrongful death lawsuit, which seems to be going on forever, a player who passed early and had repeated concussions and just a terrible concussion history. The league is taking the tactic of kind of blaming Montador and saying that Montador played when doctors told him to quit over his concussion history, and that he had other problems as well, and there were psychologists involved, that he had all these risks. And in the end, to me, it's okay if Montador's father, who brought this lawsuit, could prove that the NHL knew this when he was still going out and playing, and still, he played with Rockford after he was told to retire. Um, I don't know that lets the league off the hook. And the question then gets asked about, okay, but he got to, I think it was 11 concussions. So who was greenlighting him going back on the ice, and why? And did he pass all the tests? Because Dan Carcello's talked for years now about his dealings with concussions and the post concussion syndrome and all this. And I don't know. I don't know how well this is going to go for the National Hockey League to kind of say, well, yeah, it was kind of Montador's fault. He kept playing. When, again, that means there's a doctor somewhere that had to have signed off, because if a guy's in concussion protocol or whatever it is, yeah. I do hope that the NHL is a little more vigilant about this at this point than they were a decade ago, because we don't want any more players going through that. That's absolutely awful. The players that played in the NHL and are still going through this, it's a really, really rough life that they have, because of the headaches you can have, the memory issues, various things that can happen. And again, the league has kind of washed its hands of it. It's interesting too, because the league still doesn't say that you can have long-term issues from concussions from playing hockey. And so, yeah, this lawsuit will continue. It sometimes feels like they're trying to drag this out just to have the money run out, and then the lawsuit disappears. But this is where it's at. And again, if you're watching this and thinking, well, wasn't this going on years ago? Yep. The Montador lawsuit has been out there for a long time. So, yeah, I don't know how much further it's going to go. We'll see. Now, from last night's hockey, pivoting back to last night's hockey, which isn't the easiest when going from Montador, but from last night's hockey, I want to talk a little bit about the Oilers here, because there are certain comments I see online that I find head scratchers, and the idea that Connor McDavid doesn't play a full 200-foot game on the ice, I've never understood that. McDavid does come back, he does back check, he does play defense, and I know this because when I'm watching games, every time he comes back and steals a puck, or he's in his own zone and he's checking along the boards, I will say out loud to myself in this room with just me and animals, that's weird, because he apparently doesn't play defense, but there's the defense. McDavid's good defensively, and both he and Draisaitl are getting praise for their recent defensive work, and after that win last night against Boston in particular, talk about the defensive play. Now, to me, of the two, Draisaitl has been more of the offense player. I feel like McDavid's more of the complete player of the two. One of the reasons why I would put McDavid ahead of Draisaitl, there are others, but if I had to pick one or the other, McDavid would be the pick 100 times out of 100. But it's interesting because, again, to me, just watching the games, I can see that he plays well defensively. I can see that he comes back and back checks, and it's nice to see that that narrative's finally starting to get out there. He's a good player at both ends, and they're not every offensive player is, and they don't have to be. You don't have to come back and play a lot because, again, I mentioned this as well. You might have seen this in the comments. I don't expect a defensive defenseman to jump up and score a bunch of points. I also don't expect an offensive forward who can produce 150 points in a season to come back and play as well as Jacob Slavin defensively. Those two things don't necessarily go together. But at any rate, I'd be interested to know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.